Well, hi everyone. Welcome, welcome. GM. We have two familiar but not familiar faces, as you can tell by the PFPs, up on stage, Boot and Clouted. And so we're going to be chatting a little bit about culture and culture. Quick disclaimer, before we kick into things, we'd like to very kindly, respectfully ask you to not take photos or videos, because a couple of our panelists would rather stay undoxed. So,
There's only two of us, it's Cloud that's asking.
Yeah, exactly.
What a weird guy.
So yeah, if you could help with that, that would be very appreciated. Oh, all right, I'm getting rogued. Okay, well, we might start off with a quick intro. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Ada. I'm an investor at AirTree Ventures. We do VC funding for early stage startups and have a crypto fund as well. We invested in like Linktree, Canva, Immutable, crypto tax calculator, etc. And we're still investing. I'll kick over to you guys. Could you tell the audience how you got into NFTs, what you're currently working on, and the first community you joined and why?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I got into NFTs, I guess, end of January 2020, start of 21. I was watching a YouTube video by the artist Mankind, and he was talking about digital art. And I'm like, okay, well, this kind of looks interesting. So I went on to Nifty Gateway, the platform he was talking about, had a look there, joined the Discord, because I was already a gamer, so I had all the tools available. Joined up, jumped into a community there, started chatting with people and thought, okay, this sounds interesting, but didn't kind of pull the trigger because I'm like, whoa, I'm not going to pay $700 for a JPEG, basically, right? And it wasn't until I saw Justin Khan, the founder of Twitch TV, trying to sell one of his YouTube videos as an NFT that I was like, okay, maybe there's some validity to this kind of concept. So got in there, bought an NFT, started engaging with the community, basically hooked up with artists, and they started to create small discords in which I just joined and started talking to them. And through that, I guess, initial kind of like influx of people, it was kind of, you got exposed to a lot of people in kind of high positions and high places. And then I met a lot of people there who went on, or the founders who wanted to start West Coast NFT. I met Richard, who's the founder of Manifold Studios, and I met an artist friend who put out a project and kind of accidentally had overnight success through like a lazy mint on OpenSea. And he came to us kind of in a panic and was like, I need a team to come and put a project to market. What are these things called smart contracts? We went to our Discord to like resource someone, like directly messaged Richard, the head of Manifold, and he's like, not me, but I know these guys, hooked us up with these guys. They put his project out there, kind of developed it, and that was like the genesis of West Coast NFT. I kind of went up from there, engaged in the project space and did my own project, circled back to West Coast, started being a strategic advisor with them based on like, for like probably 12, 16 months. And then did another project at the start of this year, and now I work, I'm the head of West Coast NFT launch, kind of turnkeying artist drops for them. Yeah.
Nice one. So you've got the behind-the-scenes view of a lot of these projects coming out.
Yeah. So I mean, we've done, to our knowledge, or to my knowledge, we've done the most projects in the NFT ecosystem. So we've done 37 sold-out collections. No one else has done any more. So if they say they have, they're lying. But yeah.
We'll have to tap into that a bit later on exactly what the secret sauce is around that. But spinning over to you, Cloudy.
GM, my name is Clouded, and if you wouldn't mind, no photos. I would really appreciate it if you do respect my privacy, but ultimately, it is what it is. So how did I get into NFTs? I was in crypto for a few years back, and obviously being on Twitter, you kind of got exposure to NFTs, and then I was around when Punks was there in 2017. I never really got into it then. There was no clear value prop for me as an investor. I was just very focused on ETH and more around the infrastructure side. But then last year, 2021, around July, this random project called Bored Ape Yacht Club kind of came out and started getting a lot of hype on Twitter. And I was watching it go up and up and up and up and up. And at the stage, I was still thinking they were JPEGs and just a way to take your ETH from you. But I did some research. I kind of developed a value proposition for myself and kind of realized that there is something there and started delving into the space more, got involved with a whole bunch of communities, and then basically became full-time NFTs for the last 12 months, apart from crypto.
We love a degen.
Yeah.
Let's dive a bit into like what is culture. And this is a bit of a big topic, so we might take a historical lens, Clout. Like, how have you seen culture evolve from like, you know, the cryptocurrency time into NFTs? Like, you know, what were the Web3 metas around the time? And then have you seen a blending of the two like different groups, or is there kind of more of a separation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So for me, coming from a crypto native background, I think that crypto culture is much different from NFT culture. I feel that crypto culture was born out of specific values for a specific reason. These being decentralization, censorship resistance, credible neutrality, permissionlessness, trustlessness, these things that were what spawned crypto as a whole to achieve something which is kind of grand. I don't necessarily think that this NFT culture that we currently have fully it understands and basically takes in the same type of...
Or cares about.
Or, I mean, it's got aspects to it, but yeah, definitely agree, yeah. I think it's important. I think that people don't realize crypto, or at least where it was born out of, is so much more than just Web3, that people are labeling it as just a new platform to build on, a new way to build applications with new features. But it is, in fact, such a economic, social, and political revolution that's happening. And it's very important to have those values because the world that we're moving into needs a very democratic system. Otherwise, these technologies, these blockchains, if they don't enforce these values of decentralization, they could become like the #1 weapon towards absolute tyranny. Information is the most valuable resource in the world. And if somebody has control of that information, which is essentially what blockchains govern, then they control a lot. They control basically how the perception of the world is seen. So I think that crypto culture is very much a revolutionary culture, whereas with NFTs, it's more the Silicon Valley culture of how to build startups, how to build on this infrastructure, and doesn't really embody the in-depth, I guess, revolution that crypto really was spawned out of.
Well, it's separate too, right? Like if you think of like the crypto roots and people talk about like cypherpunk and stuff like that, the average degen doesn't give a shit. They like price go up. If price doesn't go up, I'm out of here kind of thing, right? So like the cultural aspect of what the NFT ecosystem is all about is constantly shifting, and we're kind of at an influx point where here, like people now don't have a dollar valuation to peg to like the worth of an NFT. So they're looking at their collection going, what value is here, right, at this point? So we've kind of come full circle from like speculating around what these things could do, speculating around like utility and kind of use case to kind of now, okay, that stuff didn't work out. This is no longer valuable. I don't care about the lineage, or like, you know, I'm less inclined to believe in the lineage of crypto. Yeah. What's the specific narrative of culture in the NFT ecosystem? Like where, because obviously you've got the kernel of like the genesis of the idea forming in kind of cryptocurrency, but it's definitely taken on its own kind of arc. And now we're kind of at the end of that arc, and we're kind of, what's the next arc kind of thing coming?
Definitely. I would also say it's not necessarily negative. When I'm definitely not bashing the Silicon Valley culture of Web3. I think it's very important because any exposure to the real world, bringing as many people to this space as quickly as possible is very important, because a certain percentage of these people do kind of realize the real value proposition of what's going on here. And I think the more exposure that gets, the quicker, the sooner, is it's more empowering for this space moving forward.
Yeah, and these are really good points, right? It's like we have essentially what is a community cloud, right? Like we are distributing ownership, and there is now a sense of community ownership, and it's now empowering communities in a way that hasn't previously been possible, with like economic incentive, and like shared ownership alongside, you know, buzzing, vibing, and having the best time. Like there is a very structural shift that's enabling the way the communities have come together.
Yeah, and like even the concept of vibing is such a weird concept, right? Like to have this economic system where people are being enriched through putting out startups and business, but then it's all about the vibes. Like, how does that translate to Web 2 and to like the broader, like, I guess, culture phenomenon? You know, it's such a nuanced case of like of what, I don't know. It's just like this kind of like melting pot of internet culture, like of memes, of kind of just like post-ironic ironism and just this, it's really meta.
Yeah.
And there's like these people literally building like, you know, $100 million applications and projects, right? And building out like a new way of doing business with Pepe memes.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make any sense, but also it's so wonderful.
Yeah, makes you think you're possibly in a simulation.
Basically, yeah.
Well, on that though, you know, you're deep in MFs and, you know, you've been working with a lot of projects as well. Like, from what you've seen, like, what have been like kind of the defining factors of like really strong cultures, like community cultures?
I think that you can't force culture. You have to kind of have it organically grow through your user base, right? Case in point, Randy Zuckerberg singing that Wag Me song, if anybody saw that. That's forced culture. That's a top signal, and that did not work, right? But then you have these communities such as like MFers who basically had Satoshi. He didn't rug the project, but he left the project. He may have rugged the project.
It was always going to happen.
Yeah. But then that's now a community-driven kind of movement that is led by like a council of people drawn from the community to take it forward. There's no set narrative on what an MFer is. It's basically just an MFer, right? One MFer equals one MFer. And the proliferation of memes, like to drive that narrative forward, is so strong. And it's like, what makes them successful in the space? Because it's not dollar value, right? It's the presence of their community, putting in time, like in the space, day in, day out. Literally the spaces where the MFers just go on it and get drunk and talk shit, right? But that's a massive like value prop in that they have a permanent presence in the ecosystem where people can go in and learn about MFers. And so people have literally joined these spaces and gone, wow, I like you guys, I'm going to buy your project. Without even, there's no roadmap. No. There's just these little cartoon guys smoking cigarettes.
There's no roads where we're going.
Like, you know, it shouldn't make sense that it's popular, but it is. You know, and you can extrapolate that and look at other projects in the space like Sappy Seals as well, right? Like, what makes Sappy Seals successful? They're like, this sounds so stupid to say, but it's like literally, like, what makes Sappy Seals successful? Well, that's right, and it's a great catchphrase, but it's like they've used memes as a form of marketing to kind of drive their presence in the space forward, to let people know about what they're building and how they're building.
And they have a lot of pretty girls in their community.
And that's just like, that's a result, that's a result of their effectiveness to kind of like infiltrate the community within the space in a broader sense, and people wanting to be like associated with that project. Yeah. Because their PFP is all over Twitter. Their floor price is really low. They shouldn't be successful by traditional NFT metrics, but they're super successful in terms of like how, I guess, much engagement they get on Twitter. And if you can capture the voice, if you can be the main voice in the town square where the narrative is created, then you control the memes of production.
I understand. I mean, this comes back to this whole concept of like, you know, last year we saw a heap of roadmaps come out, right? Like all these promises, but there seems to be a piece around authenticity. There seems to be a piece around like having complete ownership of your branding and exactly what your voice is and who you then attract naturally, because that then translates across screens. I'm going to take a bit of a founder lens now. Like, you know, how do you build and consolidate these cultures and communities? Like, if you think about the voices in these communities who've drawn people and people naturally gravitate towards, like, what do you think is a common thread that across them?
Yeah, I mean, Cloud could probably answer this from the perspective of his community building that he did with Doodles.
Thank you, Boot. Yeah, I can answer this in the perspective of the community building I did with Doodles.
But you did, so like, as a template, as an example, it's like, okay, looking at what makes something successful, it's community-driven initiatives led by people who aren't associated with the project.
I think what you touched on before, and it does relate to Web3 culture, is I think the most inherent thing to Web3 is basically the contribution side of it. The most powerful projects, I think, long-term, will be the ones where the holders are actively contributing towards the vision. I think the projects that have a founding team and have this centralized authority that is dependent on driving it forward are definitely more of a liability. And that's why MFers is so strong, is because there is no expectation, there is no roadmap, there's no roads where we're going, and basically it's completely community contributed. So Nouns is a little bit like that. I don't want to speak on Nouns. I know there's a lot of Nouns in here. They might, if I say something wrong. But I definitely think that community contribution is key. And Doodles' community had a lot of that, especially with, they were one of the very few projects at the beginning to start the community treasury that empowers their community to actually draw funds from the success of their brand to basically build on top of it and contribute back. I think that's a very powerful thing that we're going to start seeing more in.
But even to the point of just being a well-known personality repping the brand, right? Like if you see that doodle, you instantly associate it with Clout, right? And they didn't pay Clout to go out and promote the project. He's organically gone and started to be part of a process, started to be part of a project outside of any kind of rails, right? And that's kind of what you're seeing. The most successful projects in the space organically develop this kind of support level, right? And if you can organically develop a support level, you take it beyond like the metrics that are set by the project. You almost need to transcend the boundaries that the project founders set. And if you can do that, then you're successful.
That's 100% correct. I think a big part of NFTs is digital identity. And a lot of people in the space currently, it's very important what your digital identity represents. So when you're repping a doodle, whether you like it or not, there is a lot of exposure to the brand itself, even if you do your own thing. I think projects that are CCO, that are no founders and whatnot, could be stronger digital identities, like MFers, et cetera, et cetera. That's another aspect to just take into consideration.
And you've both touched on a really interesting point, right? It's very much how do you empower your community to do what they love to do and also contribute back to the community. Like there is this beautiful circularity to it. That helps the community grow.
And you can try and set that path for the community to do, and you can incentivize it. But I think the best way that's done is by community-led initiatives that don't spawn from the project whatsoever.
And so as people who are part of community, like what kind of communities and culture would you like to succeed? Like what are the elements that bring you in and that you'd like to kind of see magnified?
I think that being in a bear market right now, you need to disassociate any project from dollar value, right? So there's kind of, if you think of like traditional political movements and like an ism, right? They can succeed in the absence of kind of like structure because you're planting an idea into the heads of people. An idea is kind of a virus and then you can take it forward, right? With projects right now, utility is dead, dollar value is dead. It needs to be something more. If you can make a cultural play and develop a project into a cultural lens and become part of the ecosystem, become part of the broader conversation, then you can basically survive like a nuclear bomb. Again, think of like any kind of revolution that takes place in the world, right? You can crush the members of the revolution, but you can't crush the ideology. And this is kind of what we're seeing with the cultural play with NFTs in the space. The people that make a cultural ism and can develop, I guess, an ideology around that project structure outside of politics, but within the constraints of NFTs themselves. Those projects will be the most successful.
For sure. And it comes back to that the tribalism of the little language, right? Like GM is such a globally recognized kind of trait of a degen.
Yeah.
Right? And these little things start to help shape the way that we relate to each other and connect with each other.
It's basically, hey, comrade, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Wait, hold on.
in a capitalist lens, right?
Clout, I'm going to throw it to you.
No, I totally agree with Boot. I think having that cultural inflection is key to building that. I think your vibe attracts your tribe. So I think, there's no black and white answer to this. I think every community will attract a certain type of individual there, and you kind of find the community that you vibe with and start contributing to it, and that's what it leads to success. So I'm part of a few different communities. I would say there's a lot of Moonbirds here. I'm a Moonbird myself. I feel like Moonbirds is some Moonbirds might disagree with me. I feel like it's a more corporatized kind of community where it's more value-driven from the connections you make and basically, I guess, the networking side of it with more professionalism. And then you have MFers, for example, which I'm also an MFer, and it's very much, how do we fuck around and do something cool? That's literally the culture. So these communities are able to find each other, and that's what makes them strong.
And final question, because it looks like we've, time's flown. What's the most creative, fun way that you've seen Web3 come into play? Like, whether it be an experience that you've had that you wouldn't otherwise expect to have, or something that you've seen in using the blockchain technology itself. Like, I know we talked about Splat, for instance, as...
Yeah.
I liked when we were trying to buy the script for Dune, because that was just like, there was like $23 million in there or something, and I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, there's like charities in the world begging for dollars, and we're like, oh yeah, $1,000 to buy the script of Dune, that'll pay off long term. Like, it's such a stupid use of the tech, but it also like basically demonstrated how useful it can be, right? It also demonstrated like basically how humans have a tendency to kind of put money towards what entertains them versus what might
Constitution DAO.
A Constitution DAO is another...
This crypto community raised $43 million to buy a copy of the Constitution, but they're not going to raise any millions to bail out the entire industry right now.
Yeah. And it's like people are picking these causes, and again, I think it's based on like the culture in and of itself being very meme heavy, right? It's like, that's a meme, Spice DAO was a meme, like saving Julian Assange wasn't a meme, but like that, there's multiple examples of that kind of stuff whereby people throw money at it, they throw capital at it because it's part of the broader ecosystem, and it's a meme play, it's a cultural play.
So then what do you think is needed to unlock that kind of more intentional group of people? Like, so that the ideologies start to line up with your, crypto natives and the bigger picture of like how we, really use blockchain for scalable impact across various facets of our lives?
I don't think it will. I
agree.
Yeah, I think that people are inherently like averse to kind of tackling the problems of the world head on, and that reminds them too much of problems. But if you're doing things for a meme, then it's a laugh and it's like less responsibility. So I would like to see the technology leverage for that long term. With the NFT ecosystem and the crypto ecosystem as it stands, it won't. But if this gets broader mass adoption and we branch out into mainstream, then people using traditional models to benefit the world for good, then you can leverage the tech and do things there. But the substrata of population doing that thing is not in this ecosystem. They're not doing Pepe memes,
Yeah. There's some good DAO memes, DAO organizations, right? Especially in the science space, like DSci.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things are happening, but it sounds like there's a long way to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we'll see that play out over the next 12 months. Like where we end up, we don't know. But I think that when you remove greed and when you remove money from the equation, when you strip it back to its base layer, when there's nothing there left but community and culture, you're able to basically start afresh and have the building blocks of a new society. Even if it's a digital society like based on tenets that we don't know yet, you can craft a narrative, take it forward, and ideally the bad actors of the past don't come back to prey on the new actors of the future.
For sure. And you're touching on this bit, like basically what's being enabled is new ways to organize, right? New ways to organize thinking, like personalities, and magnify as well.
Well, the PFP is a whole example of that. Like personal branding through a cartoon PFP and a handle is basically a new concept. I mean, Instagram exists with a handle, but not without your face kind of thing. So you can build a digital identity and be reborn into this space. You can network with people who are doing amazing things. You might be having a conversation with somebody who runs like a super successful startup in Silicon Valley, and you don't know it because they're behind this PFP. So there's never been an ease of access greater than this time now. And if you're putting in time into the space now when most of the people have left, you're going to get access to the best connections. You're going to get access to the people that truly believe in the tech and truly believe in the culture and who want to drive it forward for good. Because the ruggers have left, you can't make any more money left. The influencers are gone, they're silenced because there's nothing to talk about. Just wait for 6 months until if it starts booming again and those voices come back, tell them to shut up. Like, we have to dictate what the future looks like if we want the future to be good.
For sure. And Clout, what about you?
I agree. 2 points I'll make is I think incentive-driven things in this space, in Web3, I'm generally more bearish on. So I think that when, for example, nobody is incentivized to build on Ethereum other than the fact that it's the most secure decentralized network that they're going to be building on. But I have gone to conferences and I have seen projects that are actually incentivized to build on Cardano or, like, God forbid, Bitcoin SV. Like, I've literally seen that. So I think in the NFT space, we are seeing incentive come through on a lot of projects, whether it's VC backed, whether it's expectations that are placed because of the roadmap and stuff. I think when there's no incentive aligned, the intentions are more pure, and those intentions go back to those values that we spoke about at the beginning, which is more core to those crypto principles that contribute to this economic revolution, this political revolution, this social revolution that is really happening in this space. And those products that are going to be built are likely going to be much stronger than the others.
Yeah.
Yeah, the latter.
And then what you're touching is essentially this the familiar and the unfamiliar, right? Like you have people who are building in this ideology, and then there are people in the middle who are trying to facilitate, and then you've got people where we are now. And there's a journey to be had, like what kind of stakeholders you engage, like it really does come to the business you're building and what kind of values you're.
One more thing I want to say is in this space, and I don't think it really applies to any questions you asked, but I think in this space, we're seeing a lot of products that are being built for the sake of being built, and they're being built in what you may call a Web 2 or Web 2.5 fashion. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but Web 3 is a decentralized stack the whole way through. And I think when you build your product with those values, it's going to be much more longer lasting, and it will be much more core to crypto.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.